Following the Toronto Maple Leafs' massive win against the Boston Bruins on the back of Austin Matthews and Ilya Samsonov, we have some major updates coming out from both the Toronto Maple Leafs coaching staff and camp and the Boston Bruins camp as they have a major injury that could be massive for the Maple Leafs going forward. We also have, of course, a William Nylander update and Mitch Marner following his rough game yesterday. He is taking heat. Stay tuned for that and much more in this episode of Leafs Digest. And Darius Mitch Marner, he's taking heat from fans, he's taking heat from media, and then we also have a major update regarding the Bruins. But before we get into it, a quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. About 80% of you who are watching are not subscribed. It would mean the world if you hit that button. And let's get right into it. This is huge for the Leafs. Now, Darius, an injury for the Boston Bruins. We discussed it yesterday a little bit, but we didn't know to the extent that the injury was, the severity of the injury. And Jim Montgomery said Andrew Peeke is week to week with an injury and won't travel with Boston to Toronto for games 3 and 4. And assuming maybe he doesn't go to game 7, he might be out. It looks like he's going to be out for the entire series. Andrew Peeke is a guy who was on the Maple Leafs radar back at the trade deadline, if you remember. This is very big for the Leafs. Now, I never want to be happy about someone getting hurt. I obviously wish Andrew Peeke the best. That is not what I'm saying here. But from a strictly hockey perspective, this is very big for the Leafs going forward. And just like the Bruins want to take advantage of William Nylander being hurt, the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to have to take advantage of Andrew Peeke being out for what looks like the entirety of the next 2 games at least, and I would say beyond that as well. He's probably not going to come back, if you're a Bruins fan out there, until round 2.
I mean, listen, I don't want to compare either, but William Nylander skated, and Andrew Peeke isn't even making the trip to Toronto for games 3 and 4. So the language they're using week to week makes it sound like he's probably done for the series, and I think in terms of on ice, that's a good thing for the Leafs. Again, not wishing an injury on anyone, and I hope he recovers well. But it's huge because the Bruins get a little bit thinner as you go down into their depth on defense, because I think they're going to have Lowry come up, and he's inexperienced as well, and that's a big thing we've talked about in playoffs. You need guys who've been there before. The Leafs have a lot of depth, maybe not the best players, but if you're comparing, the Leafs are very deep on the blue line, and the Bruins, I don't know if I could say the same, but again, we're on Leafs Digest here, so maybe that'd be something for Bruins Digest, but it gets a little weaker. So again, like you said, it's interesting. The Leafs were targeting Andrew Peeke at the trade deadline. He ends up going to the Bruins because the Bruins needed depth, and he gets injured here, and it looks like he might be done for the series. That wording, if that was used with a Leaf week to week, I'd be pretty concerned.
Yeah, at the very least. And this was one of their big acquisitions at the deadline. I don't remember the exact draft compensation they gave up for Andrew Peeke, whether that was a second or whatever it was. But he's a very solid player, and one that, if you're a Maple Leafs fan, you have to be encouraged. I don't even like saying that, but you have to be happy if he is, the fact that he's not going to be there, assuming he's out for a little bit. Obviously not happy he's hurt, make that clear. From a strictly hockey perspective, yeah, it's good for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And obviously they took care of business yesterday, but the big words here, week to week, Darius, is not something you hear very often when someone gets injured in the playoffs, even if it's just because of strategy. Like, if they thought he was going to be back for game 5 or 6, I wouldn't even think that they would release the severity of the injury, because now we know that he's going to be hurt and he's going to be out for a while. The Leafs can now plan for the next person who's coming up, plan around him. He won't be on the trip. It is a tough blow. He's been really good for us, and he has been. He's been very good for the Bruins. And overall, Darius, this is unfortunate for the Bruins, but the Leafs kind of got a little bit lucky here. That being said, of course, William Nylander. So any thoughts on this before we wrap up? Unfortunate for the Bruins, unfortunate for hockey in general, but if you're a Leafs fan, you got to be, I guess you got to be encouraged with the fact that this could open up a very big opportunity for them.
Yeah, we're tiptoeing around it. Obviously, you don't want to cheer on an injury, but it does make a difference for the Leafs, right? This is a good player for the Bruins, and Montgomery says it right here that you're looking at. It's a tough blow. He's been really good for us. He's speaking like this guy will not be back for a while, or won't be back at least for the series. So, like I said, when you go down their depth chart, you have another, and Peeke is a right-hand shot. All these things make a difference in the playoffs. You can move the puck faster up the boards on your strong side. Experience, like I said, he's a bigger body. It's gonna pay dividends, I think, for the Leafs a little bit here, if they can take advantage of the Bruins not having 100% of their healthy lineup ready to go. And again, William Nylander's not playing either, so everyone's gonna deal with injuries. It's just how you capitalize on weaker spots on either team, right? So the Leafs have an opportunity to continue to do that, and I thought the fourth line did a good job. I'm not saying you're looking to injure guys, but you're looking to wear down their defense, and it's happening already. So I think that was the goal, and obviously not to injure somebody and keep them out, but you're looking to wear them down, and they did that. So the Leafs have to capitalize with certain things happening like this.
Yeah, that's what happens when you play playoff hockey. You can see how physical it gets, and that's why the refs try to send messages with some penalties. But ultimately, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. But let's touch on Mitch Marner now. Before we touch on Mitch Marner, just a quick update on William Nylander. No major update. Obviously, no update today because not much happening for us here today except for getting ready to travel. But he's a possibility for us tomorrow, I guess, is all I would say. A bit more encouraging, maybe, even though he kind of didn't say too much. I think he could be back tomorrow, which is something we didn't, tomorrow, which is something we didn't say last time. We'll have a bigger update for you guys on that tomorrow, but most likely he will be out, there's a chance he could play tomorrow, but probably going to be out for that. Yeah. But Darius, Mitch Marner, we discussed this in the stream yesterday. Check it out if you haven't. We'll be live again tomorrow, post game. But so this is kind of floating around Twitter, and it's basically, you look at Mitch Marner's effort out there. He could have easily taken the board route to this puck. He didn't. He didn't want to get hit, whatever it was, and it ultimately ended up in the Bruins getting the puck instead. You can kind of see the freeze frame there. I suggest you go look at the clip, but he basically goes around him instead of going on the board side. Darius, Marner's been very bad, and we've been saying it for a little bit now. You have a lot of people. He's taking major heat. I'm at the point where Marner will have to take less than what he's at right now in order to stay here. He has subpar playoff performances every year, blah, blah. And a lot of Leafs fans are saying they would rather get rid of Marner or not pay Marner and then re-sign Bertuzzi and Domi and then trade Mitch Marner for a defenseman with control who's going to be good, and they'd rather spend the money on keeping the two forwards and Domi and Bertuzzi. Obviously less star power there, but depending on what you could get in return for Mitch Marner, what are your thoughts on the whole situation? I mean, he's obviously hasn't been playing well at all. He's getting nitpicked a little bit, but that's what happens in the playoffs. You get nitpicked for every poor play, and this one was, I mean, it was lazy, or I don't know if lazy is the word. I don't know what it was. It was just weird. It can't really be happening from a start in the game. Again, go check out the clip, but I don't know, Darius. He, even just the bad play when he doesn't take that route, the proper one, lack of effort out there, I think.
Yeah, and everyone's cherry picking this clip, and I think for good reason. Again, I don't think we should use this as like time to dump on Mitch Marner segment or anything like that, because I don't think he's not trying completely. I do think he's trying in certain areas, but Jordan Schmaltz even came out, and we mentioned him in a video yesterday, came out on Twitter last night and said this was the infamous bailout that he's like, even I used to do when I played, that makes you look like you're going to be engaged in the play and you just bail out of not wanting to get hit. And it looked exactly like that. Like he gave up inside positioning to go to the outside in what looks like to not get hit, right? When he could easily have just made the play, went in, gotten the puck, moved the puck, taken the hit. And that's what the playoffs and playoff hockey is about. You got to take a hit to make a play. Like so many times last night, the Leafs are doing that. Matthews is doing that, and he kind of bailed out there. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We have the clip. It certainly looks that way. And it's really interesting to me how the narrative is completely swapped in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, where it used to be Nylander's the guy who has to be traded, and I think it had something to do with his cap hit. Nylander's the guy who has to be traded for another player or a package of a couple players, or a number one defenseman, or a solid top four defenseman or whatever. It's completely flipped because Nylander performs in the playoffs. Obviously, he's not playing this year so far, but he performs in the playoffs. And Mitch Marner so far has not shown that he can. And again, this series, nowhere really to be found. So I'm not surprised that this is the talking point in the narrative this morning, because he hasn't shown it, and I think until he does, that's going to be his story as a Toronto Maple Leaf, really, that he couldn't get it done in the playoffs.
And obviously his contract's up in a couple of years, and that's kind of the bigger picture here is what they're going to do going forward. I would not be, I mean, again, a lot of it depends. If the Toronto Maple Leafs make a deep playoff run, no matter how Marner does, even if he plays bad, they probably try to bring him back just because of, that's kind of what teams do when you go on deep playoff runs. But Darius, if they get eliminated first or second round, they might try to make a shift and get another defenseman to go with Morgan Rielly, because when you look at their defensemen going forward, obviously this season they acquired Edmondson, Labushkin. Edmondson looks like a very valuable piece, but aside from Morgan Rielly, maybe Benoit, he's locked up for a couple years, but they don't have a really good, excellent defenseman alongside Morgan Rielly, and some people don't consider Morgan Rielly like an elite defenseman, depending on if you consider him or not. So maybe they trade Marner for someone like that. Again, this is going to be a conversation for the offseason for sure, but for the moment, Marner needs to play better. He needs to stop carrying out getting hit. It doesn't matter at this point of the season. You have to do it. If it means getting the puck and it means getting hit, then you get hit. I can guarantee you a lot of the fourth liners would have went and gotten hit for this puck, or almost everyone else in the team. So that's kind of just the MO of Mitch Marner lately, and it's going to be his. He's going to have. It's only 2 games in though, so we have the rest of the series to see it. But the pattern the past few years has been rough. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's the track record. That's why everyone's fed up, and this is going around Twitter today. It's the fact that this has continued for the last 5 years, and it's continuing to happen, and everyone keeps talking about how maybe he can turn it around or find it and drive the net more and stuff like that. But then you see things like this, like last night, and you're like, okay, maybe he just doesn't have it in this way. Maybe he's just not a playoff performer, right? You got to start looking at the facts. You got to look at what guys are actually showing you, right? So I think that's why it's making the rounds today. People are just a little bit fed up now because they've seen what Nylander and obviously Matthews showing up in big moments again last night. So you need, if you're gonna be paid that much, you have to show up in these moments and make a difference. That's what it is. So he has to come out on top with the puck there. I think he has to take a hit to make a play. It's playoffs. You're gonna get hit. So they just need more out of him. Just make yourself useful. I think I talked about it on the stream yesterday. Just make yourself useful. Whatever it is, get engaged in the game. Even if you're not scoring goals, find a way to get engaged.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see. And again, we'll have you covered for the post game stream tomorrow, as well as a lot of videos gonna be coming your way. There's a lot to talk about. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know your thoughts are on that, and we will see you either later today or tomorrow.